Shalom, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Shah. Double honor to the apostles of GMS. My name is Amna Allah, coming at you with another lesson. And this lesson is going to be a continuation of a series that I have going on, which is 6 things to do with the Lord hate. I haven't been able to finish it up due to the fact that I've been doing other shows, but I want to get into this right now. So this is Proverbs chapter 6 verse 16. These 6 things doeth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. Now, if you've been paying attention to the previous shows, a proud look, a lying tongue, hand that shed innocent blood, all of those things have all been things that can go back to Genesis, the first chapter, going back to the serpent deceiving Eve, going back to the serpent, Adam and Eve, and also going back to Cain and Abel. All those things can really go back to the very beginning with the serpent and Adam and Eve, and and as well as Cain and Abel. But I want to go into a different perspective on this one, and this one is a heart that deviseth wicked imagination. The same thing in reference to serpent deceiving Eve, and Eve and deceiving Adam, and Cain deceiving his brother Abel, and so forth. But I want to give a different perspective on this one, so let's get right to it. This is the book of Esther. This is the 3rd chapter. Before I get into this, I want to give you a brief synopsis, which is a brief summary. The book of Esther begins when you have a king named Ahasuerus. Okay, he reigned over 127 provinces, and what happened was he had threw a feast in the 3rd year of his reign, and he had brought all of the nobles. He had invited all of the nobles and all of the princes of the provinces. The feast was for his princes, the servants, and nobles, and so forth, all of the different provinces. And what happened was he showed them the riches of his kingdom many days. And this feast lasted 104 scores of days, which is 180 days. And what happened was he had called for his wife, Queen Vashti, to come before him and come before the princes because her beauty was very great, and he wanted to show her off in front of the princes. But she refused to come forth. And from that day, he put her away. And when he put her away, there was a decree that went out to all of his provinces that all of the wives had to honor their husbands, both small and great. So no matter how small or no matter how great their husbands were in the land, they had to honor them, lest other women follow the footsteps of Queen Vashti. Okay? So that's basically the point. Oh, and you had in Esther. Esther is the cousin of Esther's uncle is a man named Mordecai, who was of the tribe of Benjamin. He was her Esther was Mordecai's uncle's daughter, which will make Esther Mordecai's cousin, his younger cousin. And Mordecai was of the tribe of Benjamin, which that means Esther could have been in the tribe of Benjamin as well. The reason I say could have been because he could have been an uncle on the mother's side, uncle on the father's side, more likely the father's side. So more likely she would have been a Benjamite as well. But the reason I say more likely the father's side because the Bible is a patriarchal book. It deals with men. And Esther, whose real name is Hadassah, she came forth. Basically, what happened was after Vashti was put away, Ahasuerus had basically had like a beauty contest, so to speak. All of the women of all of his provinces were to come unto Shushan the palace. He had basically had all of his officers of all of the provinces gather all of the fair young virgins unto the palace, and throughout all of those women, he chose what woman that he was gonna make his wife, that he was gonna make the queen. And this woman was Esther, whose real name was Hadassah, who was the cousin of Mordecai, because because Esther was Mordecai's uncle's daughter. So let's start up. So this is, hope brothers got that. All right, so let's get right to it. It says, after these things did Ahasuerus promote Haman, the king of Amidatha the Agagite, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman. So all the king's servants that were at the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman. They honored him, for the king had so commanded concerning him. So the king commanded that you was a bow before Haman. Okay, because he had a high seat, a high position in under Ahasuerus. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did reverence him. And not to mention Esther's heritage was not known, so they didn't know that Esther was a Jew, was an Israelite. And it was said that Mordecai was a Jew as well, but he was of the tribe of Benjamin, showing you that those not necessarily the tribe of Judah were considered Jews as well. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they had spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. So basically what happened was, they said to the king's servants to Mordecai, Why did he transgress the king's commandment, not bow down unto Haman? Okay, now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. So they said, well, we're going to tell Haman what's going on. Okay, verse 5. And he had told him that he had told Haman that he was a Jew. Okay, or Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew, and because he wasn't going to bow down unto him. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reference, then Haman was full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom, as of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So because Mordecai didn't bow down to Haman and reverence him, Haman was full of wrath, and he wanted to lay hands upon Mordecai alone. And he had showed them, but it was known unto him what people Mordecai came of, which was he was an Israelite. So he says, I want to destroy all of these Jews. That is the 7th, verse 7. Okay. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that's Purim. They cast Pur, that is a lot, because Pur means a lot, which Purim means a lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. And Haman said unto Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws, therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. So Haman has said unto King Ahasuerus that there's a people that scattered abroad, Israel, and their laws are diverse or different from all the people. They don't keep the king's laws, so it's no profit for you to suffer them. It's no profit for you to deal with these people, for you to be long suffering unto these people. Verse 9. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasure. So he's saying, I'll pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that are charged of the business. The charge of what? Bringing destruction to those people, the Israelites. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman the son of Ammedatha the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, The silver is given to thee, the people also to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Okay? And what happened was the letters in which I'll read verse 13 real quick. Okay? I'll start from verse 12. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. So the writings of this decree, or of this commandment, okay, that was that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors who were in every province, and the rulers of all the people in every province. It was written down. These things were written unto them, and it was in the languages of all these different people. In the name of the king Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring. And there was a seal on these letters stating that the king had recognized it. Okay, that the king had sanctioned it. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces. So you had messengers to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish. So these messengers delivered these letters. All Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is in the month of Adar, and to take spoil of them for a prey. So, and that's what happened. So it was a commandment, all right? It was set forth throughout all the king's provinces that these Jews be put to death, all right? And this is Haman devising what? Wicked imaginations, as we just read in Proverbs the 6th chapter, which is one of the 6 things that the Lord hates. Now let's go to the 4th chapter and the 1st verse. I'm crunching it down into the couple of chapters because I don't want the show to be too long. Because before the show would have probably been a lot longer than what it's going to really be. So I had to crunch it down, get to the fine points. That's why the stuff I'm not reading, I'm just explaining to you, like I did in the beginning. When Mordecai perceived all that was done. So Mordecai perceived all that was done in regards to this this commandment that was set forth to the Jew, that the Jews be slaughtered, that the Jews be put to death. Okay? Because when you read the last verse of the 3rd chapter, I'm not going to read the verse, but it tells you, but the city Shushan was perplexed. So people were perplexed. Okay. Chapter 4, verse 1. Esther chapter 4, verse 1. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. So Mordecai went out and cried with a loud and bitter cry. He was mourning and came even before the king's gate, for one might enter into the king's gate clothed with for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. So he came before the king's gate because no one was able to enter with sackcloth. In other words, in mourning. And in every province, whether the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews. So all of the king's provinces, he had 127 provinces. All of those king provinces where those Jews, where the Israelites were located, there was a great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it to her. So her maids came and chamberlains told her what was going on. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. She was in great mourning because she was an Israelite herself. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to show what it was and why it was. So, Hatak, who was one of the king's chamberlains that he had appointed to Esther, then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So she said, you know what, Hatak, go to Mordecai and ask him what's going on. Why is this happening? All right. And it says, he encountered them. I'm going to go to, I'll read it. I was going to jump down to verse 8. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai to the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told them of all that happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasures for the Jews to destroy. So he told them what was going on. He told them, he didn't bow before him. Because he told them what all that had happened unto him. He told him he didn't bow unto him, and that Haman had offered to the king 10,000 talents of silver unto the king's treasury to allow these things to occur, to allow the Jews to be destroyed. Okay, verse 8, and he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given to Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. So he gave him the letter. He gave the decree to Hatak, said, here, show this to Esther and declare it unto her. Tell her what's going on, that she will go to the king and make supplication unto him. In other words, she'll beg unto the king and make a request for him, for her people, because she herself was an Israelite. No, okay, because he didn't want his people to be destroyed. Verse 9, and Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And again Esther spake unto Hatak and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death. So anybody who came into the king's court, all right, whether man or whether woman, were to be put to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. So all the kings, so it says, again, Esther spake unto Hatak and gave him a commandment unto Mordecai. All right, so nobody was able to come unto the king before unto the king unless the king held out that golden scepter. And if somebody came unto the king who was not called, who was not commanded to come, there was law to put them to death. And it says, and they told Mordecai Esther's words. So basically that message was relayed back to Mordecai, because he gave the writing unto Hatak to tell Esther what's going on, to make supplication or to beg before the king and to make a request for her people, that mercy would be shown unto them. But Esther then went and told Mordecai, saying, I can't do that. She still had time to tell Mordecai to say, I can't do that, because anybody that comes before the king that is not called, it's the Lord to put them to death, no matter who they are, man or woman. And he said, she has not been called to come unto the king these 30 days. So a month had passed before she was called unto the king. So she can't just do that. She hasn't been called. All right. Baby, 1 second. Verse 13. It says, Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. In other words, don't think that you're going to escape in the king's house more than all the Jews, because you're a Jew as well. And if he finds out, he may slay you as well. He will slay you. You're not going to escape. So what happened was, verse 14, it says, For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, if you don't say anything, you don't ask the king, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. It may be another place where the Jews may be delivered from this, maybe another place where someone may arise and the Jews may be delivered from another place. But thou and all thy father's house shall be destroyed. You and all your father's house going to be destroyed. He's going to kill everybody here, and he's going to kill you because you were Israelite as well. And the priest said that all the Israelites got to die. And who know whether thou art come to the kingdom, and who know whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this. In other words, who knows if you were made queen for such a time as this? In other words, the Most High could have set you up as queen, knowing that this was going to happen. Who knows? Maybe that's your purpose, which that was a purpose. Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. I'm not going to read the 16th verse, but when you read the 16th verse, she had asked Mordecai and all of the Jews to fast for her. Don't eat or drink nothing for 3 days, night or day. And her maidens going to fast likewise for 3 days. And she was going to go into the king, and if she was going to go into the king, which is not according to the king's law to come before the king if you weren't called. And if she perished, she perished. So she was saying that Mordecai fast for her, as well as the other Jews fast for her for 3 days. Don't eat nothing or drink anything, night or day. And my maids will do as well. And I'm going to come before the king, even though it's not permitted by the king's law, because I could be killed. But if I perish, I perish. All right, now let's go to chapter 5. All right, now this is Esther, the 5th chapter and the 8th verse. I'm just going to skip most of the chapter, the first couple verses of the chapter, and just give you a summary on it. Basically, what happened was Esther went before the king Ahasuerus, and she came into the inner court of the king's house. And when she came to the inner court of the king's house, the king held out the golden scepter, and she touched the top of the scepter. And he asked Esther, what is your request? And it shall be given to you even unto half of the kingdom. Not that he would literally give her half of the kingdom, but whatever she asked, if it's something great, he'll do it. Okay? Even if it's a great thing, she'll do it. And he'll do it. And what happened was she asked that Haman come this day unto a banquet that was prepared for Haman. All right? And what happened was the king chose to take heed to what it was that she asked, and now this is the banquet that's being prepared for Haman. So this is Esther 5 and 8. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do this tomorrow as the king hath said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. So Haman found out about this banquet, and he was happy. He went home with a joyful heart. But when he saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and he didn't stand up for him, nor did he move for him, he was pissed off. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him. And he had advanced from both the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. So he was all happy, saying, I got top rank in the society. I got top rank under the king. That the king has given me a high rank, and and the Queen Esther, she didn't invite nobody else into the banquet but me. She prepared a banquet for me, and I'm invited to this banquet with her and the king. But he said, I'm not gonna read these two verses, but basically said it availeth nothing to me. It doesn't mean anything to me as long as I see Mordecai sitting at the king's gate, and because he wasn't getting up for him. And basically, what happened was he said to Zeresh's wife and all his friends that the gallows be made. All right, that the gallows be made that Mordecai will be hung on. All right, and the gallows are made. Let's go to chapter 7. And this is basically the end. And I'm going to read verse 1 to verse 10. Esther 7 and 1. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he and where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? So who is that? What is this enemy that seeks to do this damage unto you? And Esther said, the adversary and the enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against them by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed wherein Esther was. So when he came out and when he returned to the palace garden, he saw Haman fallen upon the bed where Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, so as he said those words, Haman's face was covered. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold, the gallows 50 cubits high which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hang Haman on the gallows which he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. And as you read on, one of the reasons why Mordecai was shown mercy, and let me get a quick real quick. Proverbs 26 and 27, it says, whoso diggeth the pit shall fall therein. So if you dig a pit, you can fall in that pit yourself. In other words, if you devise a wicked imagination, you can fall into your own wicked imagination. He that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. If a person rolls a stone uphill, what happens eventually? That stone could turn back and roll upon them. Okay? But one of the reasons why, and that's one thing that the Lord hates. That's one of the reasons why, one of the 6 things that the Lord hates. That's the reason why Haman fell prey to his own wicked device. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to read it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read this. This is one thing I was going to read. This is Esther 2 and 21, right? This is referring to this particular point in time when Esther was chosen by the king. It tells you this. Esther 2 and 21. In those days when Mordecai sat at the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, was wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told her unto Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. So what happened was, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, sought to do the king evil. They sought to lay hand upon the king, to kill him, to slay him. And Mordecai knew of it, and he told Esther the queen, and she told the king. She certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name, meaning she told the king that Mordecai had told her what happened. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicle before the king. And the thing was written down. I'm not going to read this right here, but when you go into the 6th chapter, there was a point in time when, just to give you a little lesson, there was a point in time in which what happened was the king, when the king had spake unto Haman, he said unto Haman that what shall be done to the man that the king delighteth in honor. All right, that's in verse 7. He asked him, what shall be done for the man whom the king delighteth in honor? I might as well just read it. So this is when Haman was brought before the king, and what happened was you had a book that was brought before the king. All right, and let me see. All right, yeah, right here. It was a night where the king couldn't sleep, and the king had commanded that the records of the chronicles was brought before the king. And what happened was it was found therein that Mordecai had told about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlain that sought to slay him, and nothing was good that was done. Nothing good. And the king had asked what good was done unto Haman for that. Okay, and then when you read, it says in verse 7. All right, it says I'll start from verse. This is when Haman was standing in the king's court. I'll start from verse 6. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to honor more than myself? So when the king asked him that, Haman thought in his mind, well, who else is he gonna honor more than myself? So Haman said, and Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the robe apparel be brought which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown robe which is set upon his head. And let his apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus it shall be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of what thou hast spoken. So when he asked Haman, what shall be done unto the whom the king delighteth to honor, Haman said, give him the king's apparel, let him ride upon uh the horse that the king rideth upon, and let a crown be upon his head. So the king said to Haman, said, you know what? Good. Let all these things be done to Mordecai. And when you go into when you read down, it says, verse 11, then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be the seed of the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but thou shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with them, came the king's chamberlain to hasten to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. That's another way, that proves that the Most High hates those that devise wicked imaginations, because he thought that he was going to receive glory, because he thought the king honored him, but really the king honored Mordecai more than he honored Haman. So and further on in the story, I wanted to end it on that note, because if I would have went to this point early in the lesson, it kind of would have swerved off. It probably would have swerved off from the main point I want to get in Esther the 7th chapter. So with that, what eventually happened was all those that sought to do the Jews harm by hanging them, they were eventually destroyed. So with that, I hope you brothers learned something. I wanted to hit this point kind of at the end of the show, because it kind of would have swerved off from the main point, because I would have had to read this and then go back then go to the 7th chapter. I want to do all of that stuff with the gallows in succession in order. So with that, I hope you brothers learned something. Shalom.